Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to George Croft's American Music Show. Today's guest is Germane Smith. Germane is a booking agent and talent buyer with more than 20 years of experience in the Sacramento area. Today, she's working for Mason Entertainment, and she's just doing a great job to help bring up the next generation of artists. And we got to sit down with her and just kind of talk about the life of a booking agent and kind of things that young artists can kind of do to help themselves out and things to watch out for. So please enjoy this conversation with Germane Smith. All right, we've got a new music alert, ladies and gentlemen. My latest single, High Sierra Coming Down, has just dropped and is available wherever you get your music. So go ahead and check it out, send it to a friend, and remember that's High Sierra Coming Down. We are also brought to you by Tyler & Co. Marketing, providing top-notch photography and videography services to Northern California. Tyler & Co. is your one-stop shop for social media content, product videos, commercials, promotional videos, and best of all, weddings and events. I dare you to take a quick scroll down their Instagram page at Tyler & Co. _marketing and tell me it doesn't look like a Hollywood production. If you want people to ask you who the executive producer of your wedding was, call Tyler & Co. If you want it to look like you got paid just to be in your wedding photos, call Tyler & Co. If you want the video of your first dance to look like it qualified you for the Screen Actors Guild, call Tyler & Co. And best of all, your future father-in-law is going to forgive you for everything, when he finds out how much money you're saving him on this wedding by using Tyler & Co. marketing to capture your big day. So visit tylerandcofilms.com for all your photography needs. That's tylerandcofilms.com. So, Germane, thank you so much for coming on the show. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So you are, among other things, a booking agent in the Sacramento area. So just tell me, where'd you come from and kind of how'd you land here in Sacramento?
So I actually, a little bit of a background is when I was married, my ex-in-laws owned a racetrack. Sacramento Raceway.
Oh, nice.
And I would help put on races out there and events out there. So occasionally we would need a national anthem singer or band. And this is like back in the day, like Wonder Bread 5, who's still prominent in the area, would come out and they'd play in the middle of the track. And so got a little bit of a taste for music and events there. And then when I left there and I got divorced, I wasn't quite sure where I was going to land. And I picked up a newspaper, and the first call I made was, it said, looking for somebody to manage a club if you'd like to be in the music industry. And I made a call, and I met with the owner, and it was a live music club.
Nice.
And one of the most prominent successful ones at the time in Sacramento, and I managed that for 10 years. And probably the last 6 years or so, we would do local bands, and then I was like, I love country. Why don't we do like big country acts? And the owner at the time was like, hey, if you're running the club, whatever you want to try. I said, give me 1 month and we'll check it out and see. And so I reached out to an agency, and they became the buyers for the club, and they would bring in national talent. And fast forward as I left there after a decade. So I knew all the regional bands in the area, because it was the place to play, and we were running national country headliners. And when I left, I went to NASCAR, believe it or not, and ran televised NASCAR races for 4 years. 4 years, yeah. And that's, talk about a ton of logistics. And music was still involved in some of the races. And then after that, I left there. My dad got sick, and I took a year off, and I picked up a paper again, and it said, music industry, the word music just caught my eye. And I was like, wait a minute, could this be the company that I used when I was, when I had a buyer at Powerhouse? And I called and, Scott answered and he's like, G, if you're asking for a job, you've got a job.
Nice.
He already knew that I knew the whole area, involved in the community and the music industry for multiple years. And so instantly I became a booking agent.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like you had a ton of time to build a good foundation to start working with. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's it like being a booking agent? Like what's your day-to-day, like what's...
Oh, yeah. We could talk a long time on this subject for sure. I love being a booking agent, and the story is like literally when I joined the agency and became a booking agent, I was there for a year and a half tops, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then it was just, it was horrendous. It was, I wasn't booking shows. I was canceling shows.
Yeah.
I didn't have a huge client roster at that time because I just started out. And so after COVID, when things opened back up, it just took off like a rocket. And I mean, a rocket.
Yeah. Like, everybody was hungry to get that back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah. I can only imagine what that must have been like because from what I remember, I mean, things were open one day and closed the next. And it was like, you'd heard rumors about people shutting down, but nobody thought it actually would.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh no, everything is closed and everything is canceled. And like everyone in the entertainment industry was just scrambling to find some way to stay alive. But man, that must have been just a tornado on the management end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for a booking agent, like, the last thing you want to do is cancel shows. I mean, now I don't even want to cancel shows. There's hardly any shows that get canceled. And so, that is just what we did during that period.
So how does a management agency stay alive during a year and a half or two when nothing is going on? Like,
it was hard. They applied for, I think it was called the PPP.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like we got, and we were late. Like we tried to hang on. We were just hanging on by our nails, before we like really, shut everybody down. Like they didn't let me go at work. It's a small company. There's only, 5 of us agents, and it's a small company. And so they tried to keep us on, and then finally got to the point where we don't know how long this is going to last. Can we still pay this payroll for these employees? And then that's when, and everybody around me, it was crazy. Everybody around me had already been on unemployment and were getting these big fat bonuses.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're keeping me on salary, but I could be off and making more money because they're giving bonuses. Yeah.
I remember when that incentive structure switched and everybody was quitting jobs. Some people were quitting jobs they could have kept during the pandemic. That was a crazy time when everything was just on its head.
Yeah, that's probably another 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Or more. Just from the pandemic.
Navigating the pandemic. Yeah. That's crazy.
So, but, fast forward is, we came out of it. And during the whole time, I just marketed myself. Like, I could book shows, like I could weddings and, just whatever. And just marketed. And then we came out of COVID and everybody wanted music. And then, I just hustled.
Nice.
And, and now it's, it's crazy.
Things are rip roaring again. I feel like.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. Okay. So what is something that you wish up and coming artists knew getting into the music industry and kind of just starting out?
Top thing would be all the different things that you need to do to make yourself successful. So it's not just starting a band and going out there and playing. It comes with regular practice. It comes with marketing. It comes with etiquette. It comes with industry standards, and that's huge. Like I use that term, industry standards, because they are.
Right. So what is something on the etiquette or industry standards front that people get wrong a lot or just don't know?
Just being professional, it's garage bands, you start off in a garage band and then you're like, oh, we're doing really good. We can go out and play shows, but you have to do research. You have to be prepared. There's a long list of things that artists can do to make themselves get better gigs.
Yeah. So are there like etiquette things that you've seen people like sink their careers with, or like big mistakes that people make?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can give one of those mistakes on.
You don't have to name names.
One was naming a band a very inappropriate name, and then just expecting professional casinos and venues to promote that name.
They got to put it on a billboard. I mean,
yes, they don't think so. That's the kind of thing that, believe it or not, that you have to remind.
Yeah, Then when you tell them that, do they get defensive about it? And
sometimes they do, and sometimes they're just very steadfast on that, and then it hinders my job as an agent when they're not willing to take constructive criticism from, and I'm fortunate because I ran a live music nightclub, and then now I book for venues. So I know, I try to fill my club. Yeah. And so I can see both ends of the coin, both sides of the coin. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I bet, because you're in kind of a unique position too, because you can't, I would imagine, if you just keep booking acts that aren't actually like good, that affects your reputation, right? Like you gotta, so you have to protect your reputation as an agent when you're picking acts and booking people and making sure they're all got their ducks in a row and they're not causing issues out there.
Yeah. I mean, they're a direct reflection of myself. And so, it's like when I go to a restaurant and I get bad service, I really, believe it or not, blame it on the management, just not giving them tools and the education to do what is needed to give good service. And the same thing with bands is like just educating them to where, the goal is to have a great show, let the people listen to your music and get invited back, right? That's, you get paid, you get invited back, and everybody's happy, from the venue to the people that watch you to you just, feeling good about the music that you're putting out, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, like I said, if you had like one piece of advice, if you had to like boil, like what would solve the most problems for you if artists quit doing this thing? Like if you had to boil it down to one problem you could just snap your fingers and solve, what should up and coming artists just quit doing?
Well, I said earlier, there's a laundry list of
pick your favorite couple of them.
Of things. I think, just they just need to be more educated on gigs.
Yeah. So what's something they can do to educate themselves? Like, so it's funny, like, so in my position, it's a funny paradox where like, you got to get gigs to get reps to get professional. But if you're not professional, it's tough to get, like, you kind of need a reputation to get gigs and you need gigs to get a reputation. And it's a weird wheel to get caught in. I mean, everybody has to do it. It's not, it's not unique to anybody, but yeah, it's definitely like a trial by fire, learning on the job kind of thing. And I feel like there's big puddles you can step in, and there's, that maybe you didn't know, like, you go play a gig, you think everything goes great, and then you didn't realize that you forgot to check a box somewhere, or somebody said something that you didn't catch, or that, like there's all kinds of things that I feel like, if I'd have just known that one thing, maybe I could have saved 6 months of hassle.
Yeah. A good thing I think is to look at the artists that are surrounding your area and see like the top artists and what venues they're playing. Take a look at their website, see what their promo on their website looks like, because that's gonna tell you what is working, for them. Like promotion is so huge these days. Yeah. Like, and believe it or not, there's a lot of still free platforms that that bands and artists don't utilize. And I'm like, I don't understand, you know.
Yeah, it's speaking as an artist who is navigating that whole thing, there's only so many hours in the day, I feel like, and you have to be pretty careful about where you spend your time and where you spend your energy on stuff, because it's like you almost get overwhelmed by the amount of options there are.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not like, there's no excuse. You got to get out there and find the things that are worth your time and be, you know, active and posting your things and reaching out to people and looking for opportunities and always keeping your marketing stuff up to date. But yeah, it's definitely, especially just starting out, sometimes it's tough to know where the best place to put your energy is, because you've got to be keeping your act together. You got to be practicing, you got to be writing songs, you got to be doing the thing. And you also have to be your own promoter and your own, you know, you're managing four different social media profiles. You've got, you know, a dozen different websites you can post your music on. You got to decide if it's worth putting it behind a paywall or not when you have no audience. So it's like, some platforms are better for reaching ears, but no money. Some platforms are better dollars per ears, but nobody's listening. So it's a lot. It's like this whole sphere of stuff. You got to try to pick and choose where you put your time and kind of.
It is, but I'll plug myself.
Yeah.
So that's where an agent, like, or even a manager, and I'm not a manager, although, you know, I feel like sometimes I, you know, kind of check that box for a couple of bands, but that's where you decide what's most important for you and how you want to get there, and then you talk to a professional in that industry and you say, hey, like, if I wanted to play more clubs in Sacramento or the surrounding areas, what would be your advice? So I think, you know, for me, it would be talking to somebody that can help you and has proven to help other people in your industry, in your area, in your vein, right? In your genre too, because genre is hard.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and there's not a lot of crossover either. No. Like, so yeah, what works for a punk band is not going to work for a folk singer. That's, you know, you gotta be smart about kind of who you're looking up and trying to emulate. Yeah. No, that's So what's your kind of ideas for the future here? I mean, how many, if you don't mind my asking, how many people are you booking for? Like how many artists are you juggling at any one given time?
We have hundreds of venues that the company on a whole books for. I mean, I recently went through just my list of fair clients, and that was, you know, not booking all their stuff, but at least booking something for them, or a few things, or some of them, all of it. I mean, I have 37 fairs under my belt, and our company as a whole has over 100 fairs that we book for. So, you know, I've got fairs, I've got casinos, I've got clubs. You know, I always say I try to have all try to have my hands in all the cookie jars. Yeah. You know, and I feel like sometimes I spread myself thin, but it's because I love it, right? Yeah. And if there's something musically, you know, big that's happening in our area, I want to be a part of it. And so I'm going to do my research and my diligence and hopefully my resume, you know, and once I get to talk to a client, you know, or a venue, and, you know, I can tell them the other places that I book for.
Yeah, so, it's kind of one of those, the more you do, the more you can do in some ways. Yeah. So when you're in the trenches booking people and trying to pitch artists and stuff, how important is like followership numbers on social media? Like, because I say that because over the last 2 years, my opinion of it is kind of fluctuated, where it's like when you first get started, it's really easy to get frustrated and be like, I feel like my music's good, but I have like no followers online. And so because I have no followers, I can't get anyone to listen to my stuff. And so it's that same paradoxical thing. But the more you stick with it, and as you sort of start to build that following over time, it is a good litmus test for marketability. So like, I mean, and I feel like if the roles were switched and I was choosing who to book, the number of followers you have online should translate to the number of tickets you can sell or to the crowd you're going to draw. So it would become really easy to, well, you would think, well, okay,
not
so
necessarily.
Is that not the case?
I could stop you right there, because you can have 45,000 followers on your social media on a given platform, but if you are not relevant and if you are not current, people forget.
Yeah.
So that's the key there, is that with any good artist that is trying to grow, they need to be consistent with their promotions and their advertising. So, yeah.
Because, I guess there's only so, I guess, the idea that you would build a big following and then take your foot off the gas and not give people something to come back for. Like, maybe it gets easy to get lazy, maybe, like once you've got a big following and you think
I
the
don't think
job's
it's
done.
lazy. I think it's the opposite of that. You become too busy, and that's where you start to think about having somebody to manage you. But, there's also an episode of somebody that manages you and what direction that manager goes, making sure that that person that is representing you knows exactly what kind of gigs you want, what kind of pay you want, how far you want to travel. So it's, it's a long list.
So when artists get to that point where they're looking for a manager, like what are some signs that an artist can look for where it's like, all right, it's time to look for management? Or is it something where like that will find you? Like what's the chicken or the egg as far as like knowing you're ready for management?
They really look for you, because I think a lot of managers these days and a lot of resources that a band that's first starting out on is they rely on family and friends too, hugely. So I think for me, it boils down, my opinion is that it boils down to how busy you are and what your focus wants to be. So if your focus is that you want to write songs, but you don't want to, you don't have the time of day to be calling and to be marketing yourself and getting yourself gigs, then you might think about like, hey, where do I need help? Like, is there a specific area, or is this, and obviously the bigger you get, the more managerial skills, that somebody needs.
At least from an outside perspective, as a guy who does not have a manager, from the outside perspective, it feels like and I've talked to a couple of people that are managers and kind of picked their brain a little bit. And there I feel like the followership paradox is a little bit more clear, because it's like no manager is going to look at you when you're just getting started out. It doesn't matter how talented you are. At least that's what it seems like. It's like they need you to put work in to prove that you're in it for the long haul and worth their time to begin with. And then even then it's like they're not just, I feel like they're looking to be more involved with your career to be worth their time at all. Like a manager, I feel like, is not going to pick up the phone and be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just start handling your bookings for you.
Well, I don't think they're going to do that, but I think that, there's the word scouting. So, even as a booking agent, I'm going out there and I'm scouting artists in bands. So I think if a good manager is always looking, so, and recognizing like, hey, this is something that drives me, moves me, and moves the people around that are watching, that particular band or artist, and they see something that gives them, a direction, a drive. And so I wouldn't say, I think there's managers out there, and I think if they see you and they recognize talent, then they'd be silly not to say, hey, let me mentor you and help you to grow, So
I've heard some horror stories from other artists when it comes to management. But so if you were giving artists advice, let's say a new up and coming artist gets approached by an agent, what are some things they should watch out for and be like careful of? Like what's a good thing they can not get involved in?
So there's a difference between an actual booking agent and a manager.
Manager is what I meant to say. Yeah.
So, as a manager that approaches an artist, you first have to recognize, like, are they really doing this because it's money driven, or are they doing this because they love music, they love mentoring, and they see a potential? Because, there's a movie out, it's called think The Things That You Do. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Okay, great movie, and it's about a band back in 50s.
Oh, you remember That Thing You Do?
Yeah.
Yo, I love that movie. Yeah.
So, but there's one point as the manager is mentoring the band that he actually a label wants to pick it up, and that's where he passes.
Yeah, the guy in the RV.
Yep.
Finds Tom
but
Hanks.
For me, it's true. So, like, I have conviction, and I have heart, and I have, a drive for the artists that I book. I want to see everybody succeed, if they're talented and they're easy to work with. And, I see, that star that shines. And so I think that's getting to know the manager is huge, basically, is what I'm circling around. Is what drives them and what are they going to be representing you to how you feel comfortable.
Is it the kind of thing where, like, is it appropriate to ask for references? Like, if a manager does approach you as an artist, like, hey, could you be like, could you provide me with 6 references or 5 references, and like kind of just because I would imagine step one is just signing a contract with somebody without any knowledge of who they are. Yeah,
you should never just sign a contract. But I mean, references is I'm a firm believer in good reputation. I pride myself on my work ethic and my good reputation, and I think that is something that speaks volume. Yeah. Like, when somebody can say, hey, she's a great agent, like, you should go with her. She's done wonderful for a lot of people, and, the referrals are for me are huge. So,
do you have any thought, like, are you ever considering going more into the management side of things, or do you prefer the booking end?
That's a tough one for me because I've thought about it, and being a booking agent, I get to book multiple artists and multiple venues. And then there was a part of me a few years ago, even right after COVID, I was like, why don't I just be a TM, a tour manager? Like, I'd love to just go on the road with one artist and just, manage and oversee and logistics and stuff. And so, that's a toss up, but I love being a booking agent. I love getting out there in the field, and it's just never, for me, it's never stale.
Yeah. So no, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely like I said, as somebody from the outside looking in, it's like, you have no idea like how that system works and like who you're going to run into and like who's, approaching to be helpful and who's approaching because there's some kind of predatory money thing going on. Like it's a tough space to navigate sometimes. Yeah. But I feel, definitely young artists, especially, it's like beggars can't be choosers in some cases. If you get an opportunity somewhere, you got to really give it a look and hope for the best.
Recognizing that it's an opportunity is kind of the key there. So not letting people take advantage of you, and, just making sure that somebody who helps you knows you and represents you the way you want to be represented is huge, I think.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. So if you're, as artists are playing gigs and they're starting to get a reputation locally, and they're, when should an artist, like, what are signs that they can start asking for bigger gigs, or, what are there certain things that happen that kind of cue artists in to be like, okay, you've played these kind of venues for long enough, now you're ready for this? Or is it kind of just as the opportunities come, you just kind of grab them kind of thing?
It is. And, and there's such a thing as saturation, oversaturation. Yes. So that's huge. So that plays a big part in an artist expanding, right? So, you have a good artist, you have a good band, and they play locally, and they have great shows, and they're sold out, and and then the phone starts ringing. So that's what happens, is that, a sign of a turning point is when you're not so much promoting yourself, people are coming to you. And that's how I feel like as an agent, like I promoted myself, but now it's the opposite side.
Now you have to be good about your bandwidth. Where do you spend your time? Yeah. Instead of just having to do everything all the time. Yeah. 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 That's a good gear shift to watch for sure.
Yeah. But once an artist has like kind of captured their their region, their area. I think, a natural progression is to figure out what you want to do past that region, past your local area, because that's huge too. Like, some bands, some artists don't want to travel to Wyoming.
Right.
I've got gigs in Wyoming. Do you want to go to Wyoming? What does that look like? Are you going to complain because you're going to Wyoming? Yeah. I'm obviously going to get you the money I think that you want and you deserve, but if I get you that money and that, that you deserve, is there going to be extra complaints on top of it? Like,
So how often do you see that switch happen? So like, so for, as somebody like me who is like, I'll show up anywhere. Like at this stage of my career, I'm like, I cannot imagine being irritated that you got hired somewhere. Like, even if you're like, drive to Wyoming. Okay, I get to go to Wyoming. Like, when do you see that switch in artists where they go like, oh, I got to go to Wyoming again? Or when do you see that kind of glint go out of their eye and be like, this is
that's where getting to know, that's where sitting down and getting to know the artist that you're booking really helps. Like, that's that question I say to you. Hey, George, do you want to just play locally? Do you want to go to Wyoming? Do you want to go to New York? What is how long do you want to be away from home? Can you take middle of the day, weekdays off? Like, so that's all comes into play, because you can have a band that 3 of the members or 4 of the members want to go, but you have one member that doesn't want to drive to New York or doesn't want to go to Wyoming, and that kind of hinders the band. So just being in sync and just being cohesive, with a band is important.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed, that like other bands that I've met, and because I've done like a few of these festivals around, and like when you meet these bands that are traveling all over together for and they're just starting out, you realize that it's like you gotta be a close knit group of friends. Like you can't just be switching guys out for any random person. And then like I said, I've looked into, so I'm a solo act right now, but so I've looked into band members and stuff locally, and you got to find 5 guys that are just willing to hit the road any day of the week. They have to be willing, and they have to be fun to hang out with, and that's a tough combination to land for 5 people.
I think that's the key to all of the top bands and artists that have made it, is that they pretty much, because you see those stories about famous artists that, the band breaks up because somebody wants to go into a different direction and somebody wants to do it. So cohesion and, having a good team and working together and being able to like somebody, because there's a lot of downtime. Yeah. And that's hard with a band, because sometimes they're sitting and they're waiting for 2-3 hours for a gig. And you got to want to sit there with you.
Yeah, you can't just be sitting around mad at each other all the time. It would make life pretty miserable, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Man.
So.
Yeah, so have you, like, how often would you think, like, let's say one member of a band decides, all right, I'm out. How often can you like just replace somebody and the band still succeeds? Or is that most of the time kind of a death blow to a band's careers if one guy decides this isn't it?
It's both. It could be a death blow, but also, this is life. And, as a band and you're going to travel around, you got to be prepared for that. What if somebody has an emergency in the band and all of a sudden they can't play, but you've got this great gig that that was booked 6 months ago and you got to cover it. My suggestion is always to have like at least one backup, like, it's like a babysitter. Like you can't have one babysitter and have kids. You got to have multiple babysitters,
you have a few numbers in the Rolodex.
Yeah. You got grandparents and aunts and, friends and stuff like that. Same with a band, is that, you gotta be prepared. I don't think that you should be switching out and subbing players all the time.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Where I have one friend who Dallas Burrow, shout out Dallas Burrow, who's just puts on a phenomenal show. But I know he's used a couple different guys, but I think he kind of gets a group together and they and for at least tours and for maybe like, a couple years of time. Because I know the guys that were in his band the first time I met him, it wasn't the same group of guys the second time. So they seem to be able to kind of make some of that work. But I don't know. I'd have to ask him like how he navigates that and how many different guys he's practicing with and kind of how many backups do you
An
have?
example of that is like the drummer and the bass player. They always need to be in sync.
Yeah.
So, when you all of a sudden are in a band and then all of a sudden, you need to sub your bass or you need to sub your drums. And if you don't have those two, that's the heartbeat of your band, right?
That's a problem,
so finding somebody that can step in and fill that, that position is important.
Yeah. How often do you see bands where like everybody lives in a different town and they just manage to practice enough? Or is it like, because I ran into, a few people where like, oh, the slide guitar player is in from Nashville, but everybody else lives in California. And they managed to put a pretty good tour on. Or like, maybe it's a drummer from out of town that just like, people kind of practice several. I've seen it, like, it seems like it works, but in my head, I'm like, that would be just a logistical nightmare.
I think that just comes from maybe years of being together that they can separate and then come back together. But I think that band practice is super important.
Yeah, like it's tough to do over Zoom.
That's just the cohesion that you have as a band. So I think nationally, when I ran NASCAR races and I would do travel for NASCAR races, they would come from different areas, all over the western states, and that was a little bit different. But a band, you need your timing and everything's so important in the band. It's different.
And it's a totally different feel depending on who's playing and who. Everybody's style's a little bit different. You need some reps to get everybody gelled in. Well. But so, what do you think? I've been kind of watching and trying to figure out, some different people I've ran into and kind of different shows I've played where I feel like there's so much competition right now, especially right now. Like everybody with a guitar, I feel like is trying to, do something. And on the one hand, it seems like kind of the old way of just like doing the artist lifestyle. Everybody, the drug use and alcoholism used to fly pretty easy, I feel like, in the music industry. Like once you got established, like there's not a whole lot putting the brakes on. You're up late all the time. Like it's an easy trap to get caught in. And if you're not careful, it'll ruin your life really fast. But I also feel like now competition is so high that there's not really a lot of room for that. Like if you get drunk and screw up a gig, you're not coming back. Like that's, I feel like, because there's so much other, exactly. It's like there's so much other good talent out there. Yeah. So do you still see that a lot? Like, do you see guys just self-destruct their careers for no good reason?
I still see it, not as common as you would think, because what happens is those gigs go away and then you burn your bridges too quickly. Yeah. And then you don't have any shows because quickly somebody realizes, hey, he was on stage and he forgot his lines and he was drunk. And now these days, everybody reports to everybody. And,
Well, and so everything is on video now. It's on the internet forever.
Yeah. Yeah. So...
Yeah. And I feel like the industry, I feel like, does not play games with that either anymore. Yeah. Like it's like, so it's not the 80s where like you find out that like the manager was also the coke dealer for the band or whatever. Like, like I said, usually on this show, we talk a lot about, we do American history, like American music history has been most of our episodes we've done. And just the recurring storylines you find of guys making it and then just self-destructing for no reason. But then at a certain point, once you're successful enough, the system kind of wants you to keep going, and then you find easier hookups and you find easier, wet rocks to slip on, and people just it seems like you have to actively protect yourself from that kind of thing and like really pay attention and not, just because the opportunities are there, you gotta not engage with those. Cause I feel like the slope is so much more slippery now and your career will be just over immediately. And I think I still see it sometimes like especially on like the festival circuit, you run into, guys that are drunk on stage or they're just not taking their career super serious. And it's like, man, the market has moved on from that kind of thing. Yeah. Like if you're going to make it, I feel like you have to take your health and your like composure as a professional and kind of keep it together. without, despite the many opportunities that lifestyle will give you. Like, cause everybody hangs out after shows and everybody's partying and having a good time. And you gotta keep your act together and stay professional. Cause that's, like I said, it seems like there's just so many talented people out there now.
It's a balance for bands, I'll just tell you, because, they're there to perform. And then they're there to please people. And part of that is, giving them great music, but also letting them know a little bit about yourself, right? So that's how you get a following, is you go out and you shake hands and you mingle. For me, it just, I think, comes down for balance, just knowing what that balance is. Like, you can stay out and have a couple drinks, and hang out. But if you've got an early call or, you
can't be making a fool of yourself and missing work.
You can't. And I feel like locally, if you do that, you're not going to go far anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to burn before you become a national artist.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like especially when you're just starting out, it's like, it's so easy to not get a phone call, if you, those bridges are made out of paper when you start. So they're, easy to make stupid mistakes, I feel like. So I think that's something that I see all the time with up and coming artists. I'm like, man, that's just such an easy rake not to step on. Just like try to be a professional and try to show up and, not make easy mistakes like that. Yeah.
Well, I think, in my younger days, maybe I wouldn't have, I would have tiptoed a little bit on people's feelings. But, now that I'm older and now that I'm, more established and professional, I don't have a problem saying to an artist like, hey, you overstepped your bounds. And if you do that again, you're not going to have any gigs. I'm not going to book you and nobody's going to ask you to return. And so I think I've come to that point in my life where, and being able for an artist to take that criticism and not, I'm not saying it because, this is feedback I get from the venue and I'm passing it to you and I'm not trying to, squash you or make you feel bad. I'm trying to give you constructive criticism. And sometimes it's harsh, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, you're not, they're playing slow songs and we wanted faster songs and, they didn't dress up. They were wearing, T-shirts that had stains on it, whatever it may be, I would like to think that I'm at the point where, that, I can get that feedback.
Yeah. And like I said, to me, it's like, man, as an artist, I cannot imagine a world where you don't want that feedback. Like if you, especially it's like, if nobody says anything to you at the show, it's like, it would be like, I can't imagine having something like that. That's like an easy fix. Like, hey, you got to dress better, or like, hey, you got to adjust your set list for the venue you're playing, or like if there's some quick note like that, it's like, man, that'll make or break you in the beginning. It's like, if you don't have the kind of attitude that can take that note and then run with it, and that feels like a.
Well, it's hard, right? Yeah. You're on the stage because somewhat you have an ego, right? You want to perform. You want to be in the light and you want to be recognized and you want to be seen. And so that's that, how big is your ego? Like, and I get it because you are, somewhat of a ham when you're up there and you want to do it your own way, but you know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but even so, it's like I guess it would depend on the feedback, I guess, because if somebody gave, speaking personally, if somebody gave me feedback that was like, hey, you need to like if it was something core to my like writing style or something, or if it, like things that you can't just change like that easily without kind of selling out your art. Okay, maybe push back on stuff like that. If they were like, definitely. Hey, you need to write more like radio style country music. That's not a note that I can take. Yeah. But if it's like, hey, you got to dress better because you're pissing off venues that are hiring you to be here, then it's like, I feel like you gotta be able to take notes and you got to be able to, not just break down the first time you run into some constructive criticism. Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, because like I said, it's.
Definitely, I'm sure I've probably upset a band or two or artist or two by just, saying the way it is. But I would like to think that anybody that I tell that to knows a little bit about me and what drives me and what motivates me and why I'm saying it, right?
Yeah, but that'll probably filter out, like, I'd imagine that would, like, you can have one medium headache of a conversation and save yourself 200 small headaches over and over and over and over and over and over and over with an artist like that. And if you're the kind of artist that's going to be the kind of guy that's like, hey man, you wore a shirt with spaghetti stains on it to a nice dinner and like they said something. And if you're the kind of artist that's going to be like, they just don't get my style, you're probably enough of a pain in the neck to work with that, like, if that's what makes the relationship fall apart, that's probably a relationship that needed to fall apart.
Well, that's part of my long list that I have of, like, why I want to be on a show like yours and I want to speak is because I want, people to know that, like, hey, I'm doing this because I'm telling you this, not because I'm just trying to help you, right?
Yeah.
And so it helps you and it helps the venue and it's a ripple.
Yeah.
People don't understand about ripples these days.
Yeah. And I think it's easy as an artist because, I mean, the job number one, well, I should say for me as a songwriter and a performer, like I'm the job is to hone your craft, write more stuff, perform better, like work on the show. It's easy to focus so hard on that and forget about the rest of the universe of things you're also involved in and that you have to get right. And like, obviously what you want the positive feedback for is the art that you've just spent all this time working on and all your creative energy goes into this thing. And it would be great if you just, like, everybody wants to maximize their positive feedback for the amount of time they put in. And I feel like it's easy for people to get their feelings hurt if that doesn't match up to what they think they deserve for the amount of work they've put in so far. Versus you have to be able to do that, focus, hone your craft, practice, make your stuff as good as you can get it. And then also navigate the space, like, as a professional. And like, cause there is that, corporate's not the right word, but there's like people still expect you to be a professional and show up and look nice and be, presentable and polite. And you gotta check all the right boxes also versus, maybe it's because people find bad examples. Like there's a million, rock stars out there that are just a nightmare to deal with. And I think maybe people get a false idea of what's acceptable and what's kind of, the industry standard.
Well, it's different, right? So you're a different artist than a lot of the artists that I book. Like, and there's bands that are cover bands, and then there's bands that write their own music, right? And so, like, knowing, I think it's a different approach. Like, and it's, for me, it's, I see different visions for cover bands than I do for artists that
but I feel like some of that would be the same even for a cover band though. It's like your job is still to perform your songs as good as possible. Like the art you're giving to the world isn't necessarily original songs, it's covers of other people's stuff. Yeah. But you still got to put the legwork in and you still got to, navigate the performance and your presentation, that's,
And it depends on what, like the level, like I always ask artists, like, what is your goal? What's your end goal? Is it to play as many gigs as you can and to make as much money? Or is your goal to write songs and have people hear your music and build your audience and grow? Or is it you want to be popular and grow your audience so you can have more money? It's kind of like knowing what each band is looking for,
what their priorities are,
what their long-term goals are as far as their music and their writing and their style and their genre, what it all adds up.
Yeah. But I guess everybody's got to start somewhere too, right? That's which I think I feel very lucky in my journey so far. I feel like I just catch like one lucky break after the next in a lot of ways, but Because, yeah, it feels like you're just in a sea of people that are equally talented, equally driven.
There's so much talent.
And you got to just hope the right person picks the phone up and has a minute of, time to give you for, advice or opportunities or whatever. There's so much luck that goes into it.
Well, this is important, super important, is because sometimes a band or an artist can be playing and there's only two people and they hone out because it's not a big crowd or whatever. But you just never know who's going to see your music and who's going to get you to that next level. So you have to, especially for artists that write their own stuff and creative artists, you have to make sure that you are representing yourself the way you would want to represent if, somebody of very high importance of, a national record label is watching
Right,
you.
Happens to be the one guy in the bar,
And you'd be surprised, and I have literally stories of bands that were just disconnected because something wasn't quite right and they got it wrong and they didn't perform the way that they should have performed. And then I was like, okay, well, somebody that could have rebooked you or somebody important that could have given you that festival was watching you.
Yeah.
And I have those stories, believe it or not,
those
where,
are tough. I played, I don't know if I should say this on the air, but I played a gig the other day at a bar that I've played at a few times. It's right down the road from my house. And I showed up, it was, so I played Saturday night. So it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving or Halloween, excuse me. And
typically a slower night.
Oh my God. I had no idea.
Everybody goes out.
And so what happened is when I booked that show, months beforehand, and I, like I said, I've played this venue before and it's in my hometown and like I got friends around and stuff. And they were like, do you want to play the Friday or the Saturday? And in my head, I was like, well, Saturday is probably better, I think. And I think I was actually out of town the day before. I had something going on. There was a reason I couldn't play the Friday. And, turns out Friday was slammed in this venue. Then Saturday comes up. Yeah. Nobody's there. There's like 2 cars in the parking lot. And like at one point there was probably 20 people at the bar. Also, I had no way of being able to know 2 months in advance. I'm playing during Game 7 of the World Series inside the bar, and I'm outside trying to get people to come out and listen. So I'm playing this full gig to literally 3 people. Yeah. But like you still you play as good as you can. And what I I like to try to just any gig is good practice. You're always getting paid to be there. Like make it as good as you can make it. And it's like, you got to just pick those 3 people out and try to connect with them and try to, a show for 3 people, while it is like a bit of an ego check, those 3 people are still there and you're still getting paid to play and you still got to put on as good of a show as you can, muster up. And it's like,
those are good times though to play those songs that you're just writing, or
exactly,
you just,
which I totally,
that you need to perfect, or it's a great, it's a great time to do.
And with
any
3
of that
people,
too.
you can talk to them and be like, all right, I'm going to try this one, and you can kind of tell them about you can talk to people more directly and tell them, versus if you have a big crowd and you go into a story about where a song came from or what the inspiration was or some cool little songwriting nugget that was in there. You can't always tell those stories depending on what the crowd's like. But when there's 3 people and they're paying attention, you can make them feel like it's, the show's just for them. And then,
absolutely.
But I feel like at least at the stage that I'm at, it's like, as long as one person's listening and I'm, able to do it. So just put on the best show you can. Cause it's like, it is wild that you can be just a guy that writes songs and people are paying you to show up like at all, any amount of, at least in the beginning, it's like, it's wild to get paid to do, not just to get paid to do what you love, but when what you love is that specific thing that is so tough to break into and get paid for. It's like, man, how could you have a bad attitude about it? Like even when there's 2 or 3 people, it's like, it's such a lucky break to be there at all.
Well, times have changed, It used to be back in the day. I'm dating myself now. Where people, spent their money more fluidly. Now people choose where to go and how to spend their money.
Yeah.
And part of those experiences are from, those outings are music artist driven decisions. So, somebody chooses to take the one time that they can go out for the week and spend the money and have a nice dinner or go on a family,
maybe
date.
the month. Yeah.
And it might be that one time where they show up at the bar where there's,
they got a babysitter.
Going on. And you have to be like very, aware of the fact that they're choosing to be in that location where you're performing. And this is a chance for you to gain one more follower or fan or friend. You just never know. So, just remember that as artists is that like people can save their money and stay home.
Yeah,
or they can spend,
Yeah, that's the idea that I grab onto all the time is like, man, like legit, like I don't go to very many shows on my own for that exact reason. It's like, the idea that you're going to go spend money, buy a ticket, get a babysitter, get dinner figured out for everybody, like plan out your logistics of where you're going and who's going with who. You make it to the show. And the idea that you go through all of that effort and then somebody's having a bad attitude on stage because there's not enough people in the crowd would infuriate me. Like that would just be such a turnoff. Yeah. But
that's just being aware of like just constantly, telling yourself, why am I doing this? And is it, am I, whatever your reason is to go out and play. So it's important.
For me, it's like I file it away. First of all, every gig is good practice. So there's no, like, I'm either going to be playing by myself in my house or I'll go play for those 3 people that one time.
Yeah.
And
get paid.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And get paid. So there's really no downside here.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of lost my train of thought there. But I think it's, like I said, I just feel like artists, like I struggle to comprehend how you could have a bad attitude about something like that, because it's like, man, you're so lucky. And it's like, there are 50 people in your same town right behind you that would, fight to the death in the parking lot for the, for the chance to play.
Like happens too. You get busy and you're playing a lot of gigs and sometimes you're tired and sometimes you're not as connected. So I get it. Like I get it, but this is your profession. This is what you do. Yes. You entertain, you entertain people, and that's why you play music, is because you want to, you have a voice and you want people to hear it. Yeah.
I also like to tell myself that like, that's going to be the stories that I get to tell later. It's like, oh, I've played bars for 3 people, like back in the day, like someday bigger stages, it feels like you're putting the reps in. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
in the artist industry,
Yeah, in my head I'm like, I'm living that chapter of my autobiography.
I mean you met you got to open for a band this year, and they tell a story. They didn't get to tell it at the venue that you opened it for them. But
shout out to the Cruz Brothers. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I don't know what the do's or don'ts. Do I say names or whatever?
Oh, but I guess we could edit this out if it's something crazy. Okay. Yeah.
So I can repeat that the Cruz Brothers sat down and they have told stories of how they just marketed themselves and they push and they push and they push, and it was very discouraging at times, and they didn't know why the needle wasn't moving, and but they were consistent. They were consistent in putting out music and then you try new things, and they happen to have a living room session. And,
I remember that. Yeah.
The living room session of them performing was the turning point in their career. And they said, we were playing in honky tonks, we were playing in bars, and didn't have a huge audience, and our social media was low, and we were trying to gain followers. And then all of a sudden they did that living room, and their social media platforms just blew up, right? Yeah. So it all changed for them. So
and they're like those. I found that kind of stuff to be just like pretty inspiring, because it's like, and because first of all, you go to their show and they knock it out of the park. Like, it's a great show. And the idea is like, okay, like that doesn't happen overnight. Those guys put the reps in when nobody's looking, and then like opportunity met readiness. It wasn't just like, you know, that same opportunity could have come if they weren't practicing, if they weren't focusing, if they weren't trying. It's like, then nothing goes anywhere. It's like, oh, okay, you got a big social media bump, but you weren't ready for it. You're still playing honky tonks or something.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, yeah, you put the work in, you do everything, you know, to try to grow your career, and then the opportunity matches the work you've put in, and yeah, you get a good, you know, jump off the diving board there. But yeah, and like
they have that 3 people in the bar story.
I'm sure they do.
You know, and it just sometimes it happens overnight, and sometimes it, you know. But I think even if it happens overnight, it's because that you've prepared for it. Like you're, you know, if it does something like that, is like you've been working towards that, and you know.
I don't think I coined that phrase, but yeah, it's the saying that comes to mind is luck is opportunity meets preparedness. Yeah, it's like, oh, you got lucky. It's like, you didn't see the 3 people in the bar reps that we did for years or whatever, you know. Yeah. It's easy to, you know, that's the must be nice, you know, people out there. It's like, there's a lot of work and a lot of unseen, you know, prep that goes in.
You know, I don't think, if you're not an artist, you really realize what goes into being an artist. I wish, and my goal is to, you know, to help artists and to prepare them, but to also like help so that people are aware of, you know, all the things that go into being an artist these days. You know, you have to be competitive, you have to practice, and you have to be on top of your social media, and you have to, you know when you should play, when you shouldn't play, and how much money. There's so much that goes into it, like any trade. Like, you know, and so, you know, I think, you know, some people go out there and they just say, oh, you know, he's naturally talented, but they don't know that loading in takes you an hour, carrying gear, and what happens if you forget one cable, and then breaking down at the end of the night and going 7 hours without eating, or going to a venue or a fair and, you know, not having any food that you can eat because you've got an allergy. You know, those things happen. Those things, and they do it because they love to perform and they love to give the people music to hear and to enjoy themselves and to escape. And so there's got to be like, hey, kudos for the artists that are out there and are doing that. So and
I feel like a lot of that too is like some of that stuff, I guess you would just kind of figure out as you're going along. Like I would imagine you would only forget your cable once. As a guy who's forgotten his cable before and I've gotten a couple lucky breaks.
It happens
I've gotten a couple. I've never had anything affect the show, but I've had a few shows where it's like something goes wrong. Luckily, you're there a couple hours early and you can solve a problem. But show up early for maybe that's like a piece of advice number 1 for new artists is show up early and, you know, double check your gear.
Yeah, and well, there's a lot of artists that, you know, that are new and they just not sure how much time, or even the opposite side of that spectrum is like, you know, I've had artists that have shown up way too early and the sound man's not there, and then I'm getting a call like their band's here, and I'm like, hey, the sound man's not, you can't put your stuff there because the sound person has to run their cables. And he's not going to be happy if your gear is everywhere and he doesn't have he's trying to do a job as well. So, you know, there's so much that goes in, you know, and I'm so glad that you had me on here today just to talk.
Appreciate you coming on.
There's tip of the iceberg as far as like what I can talk about artists to help them and grow them and stuff. So.
Yeah, like I said, you run into little stuff like that all the time. It would just be so useful to know, you know, or like, you know, I feel like, there's plenty of that stuff that, you know, you're going to run into anyway, and you're probably not going to sink your career figuring it out. But if somebody could save you the trouble, you know, that's, you know, it's good information to have heading in, and maybe it'll make your life a little bit easier and save you a couple of headaches.
Well, the goal is to get gigs, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. To get them and keep getting them.
Yes. There you go. And to get them, and, you know, and that's where I would like to help in any way I can.
That's fantastic. So. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is great.
Having me. Yeah, this is my first podcast.
First podcast?
Yes.
There you go.
I'm going to do the plug as I'm thinking about maybe doing my own podcast.
If you start it, yeah, we'll give you a shout on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. As you can see, I've got a laundry list of items that I would like to just go over and, help artists to grow.
So before we close up, do you have anything sticking in your mind that you really want to get out for the people before we close up?
I mean, just what I've already said, just do your homework and, decide if you want to go with an agent or not an agent. I think you should go with an agent at all times because I think it just would make your life easier. Yeah. You can really focus more on, your gigs and the time writing and, than doing that.
And like as an artist that did that, it's been a game changer because, trying to wear that hat, first of all, even knowing where to start as far as like booking your own gigs is like, that's a job on its own, is just learning that space. And then you got to get people to answer the phone, which is nearly impossible for an unknown artist. So yeah, that's been an absolute game changer, going from like booking hardly anything to consistent work, which is great. It's
opened up for a couple now,
I've got some cool, gigs under my belt now. Yeah,
give them a little plug. The Hard Rock Sacramento, right down the road.
Yeah, right down the street. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah. So I really appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you.
All right.
Thanks again.
All right.